What's going on, everybody, and welcome into another video. Today, we're going to talk about late round quarterbacks. And the reason why I think this video is so important is for the simple fact that I am the guy in my 10 plus years of playing fantasy football. I've never been the person to draft a quarterback early. It's just something I never really gravitate towards doing. But I don't. I just generally always pass a position because I see skill position players that are super valuable that I think I need to draft over taking the Patrick Mahomes, the Josh Allens, the Justin Herberts, the Justin Fields of the world. So today, we're going to look at some late round quarterbacks who I think have real QB1 potential here in 2023. So the first guy I want to talk about is Dak Prescott going as the QB 10, 92nd player overall. You know, Dak returned from injury in week 7 after a pretty alright start. But from week 7 to 18, Dak was the QB6, averaging 19 fantasy points a game, which isn't huge, but 19 fantasy points, as the QB6 is a solid number. The Cowboys were very, very, very involved in the rushing game in 2022, scoring 24 touchdowns on the ground. That was second in the entire NFL, just behind the Eagles. The Eagles, who went to the Super Bowl. Not including week 1 where Dak was injured, Dak threw 2 or more touchdowns in 9 of the 12 games he played. That's 75% of the games he played in, he threw a touchdown. 2 or more touchdowns, I should say. And the Cowboys have improved their receiving core. Michael Gallup, another year coming off the torn ACL, which I really think the first year off the torn ACL for most positions is kind of a wasted year. Year 2, if they bounce back to the player they're supposed to be, they usually do in year 2. And they added Brandon Cooks, which at this point of his career, I don't think he's washed up yet. The guy's only 30. He still has some ball left in him. I think he was just on a bad Texans team last year. So with all these things adding up, Cowboys don't just run the ball every time they're in the red zone and Dak gets more opportunities. I can see his touchdown numbers flying way up. And as an 8th round pick, I think that's a pretty good bet on a team whose offense I believe in. Dak, who I think is a solid quarterback with a little bit of rushing upside. If the touchdowns go up, I think Dak Prescott could be a huge quarterback steal in the 8th round this year. The next guy I want to talk about is Aaron Rodgers as the QB 15, 118th pick overall. Look, I'm just willing to bet that Aaron Rodgers is still good. Last year, he had decent stats, but at QB 15, we're basically going in the 9th to 10th round, if even that, it could be even later. I'm just willing to take the bet that the guy who was a former back-to-back MVP before last year, losing Devontae Adams, and just not really even wanting to be in Green Bay. If you look at it from just being a human standpoint, if you're not happy to be somewhere, you're probably not going to perform. You don't care. Now, I know that's a bad excuse, but when you lose your number one weapon, and outside of that, you have a bunch of rookies and like Randall Cobb and Allen Lazard, not special players, there's only so much you can do. Rodgers basically brought his receiving core with Garrett Wilson as the new number 1 over to the Jets. I just think this could be a huge opportunity for Garrett Wilson, of course, and there's Allen Lazard, there's Corey Davis, there's Mecole Hardman. Not a lot of special players there, but a lot of specialty players. You have the big threats downfield. You have the speedster in Mecole Hardman, and then you have the true alpha in Garrett Wilson. I think all these players can make up something special for Aaron Rodgers. And especially if they go out and get Dalvin Cook as a receiving back out of the backfield, along with Breece Hall, and I think Michael Carter's a good player too. There's a lot of talent in that backfield and in that receiving core where Aaron Rodgers, I think, could take huge step forward and be a steal this year. Really, if he's going at, the 9th, 10th round. That's too late for Aaron Rodgers. The third player I want to talk about is Russell Wilson as the QB 17, 127th overall. Once again, I'm just willing to bet on the talent. Last year was a bad year from Russ. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. He looked different. But maybe it was the lack of offensive, just play calling ability. I did a video on my channel talking about the first, I believe it was 3 weeks of the season. And I said, Russ ain't cooking. What's wrong with the Broncos? And the offensive play calling was horrific at times. And the receiving just wasn't really there. The receiving core kind of didn't show up for him. I think this year could be different with Sean Payton, who's one of the best coaches we've ever had in the NFL. But this year, I think the receiving core can bounce back in a big way. I still think Courtland Sutton has some talent and shows flashes here and there. You have Jerry Jeudy, who showed flashes as well if he could just stay healthy. And then you have the likes of Tim Patrick, who was a 1,000-yard receiver 2 years ago before tearing his ACL going into last season. And you have 2 tight ends who are solid starters, Greg Dulcich and Albert O. So I think you have a lot of talent. Javonte Williams just got announced that he's not going to start the season on the PUP. So if you have Javonte Williams, who is, if he's anywhere near where he was last year, you have a pretty talented team with a Sean Payton-led offense where I go, all right, man, Russ, if I'm waiting until QB 17, 127 overall, which is almost undrafted, why not take the shot? And the worst comes to worst, if 2 games in and he throws, he scores you 12 fantasy points and 12, if he goes back to back 12s and you go, well, okay, I'll just pick someone else up off of waivers. There's going to be guys. I think you still take the shot on Russ at quarterback 18, 127. At this point, he's going so late and he's so undervalued to where I go, man, just take the shot. I think his weapons are great. And I think the big factor here is Sean Payton. If Sean Payton can make that offense into something else, something it wasn't even close to last year, I think Russ has real upside. And the last quarterback I want to talk about is somebody I'm sure you're expecting that everybody's talking about. It's Anthony Richardson at QB 18, 138 overall. Now, this guy is basically undrafted. He's a last round flyer. Toss it in. Let's hope he can rush for some yards. The story is kind of unlike the other guys, where the other guys might be really not that mobile or kind of might potentially be washed up. Anthony Richardson, we don't know the story at all. We think, if anything, he has limited skills. He's a rusher and not great passer. He's raw. But what if that's wrong? Flat out, what if that's wrong? For Richardson to be good at fantasy, he either has to throw for a ton of touchdowns or he has to run for a lot of yards. It's doubtful he'll do it through the air as a rookie, but on the ground, that could be his bread and butter. He's got the cheat code. Last year, Anthony Richardson would have been a steal if he just rushed for 700 yards. That's it. 2022, Daniel Jones finished as the QB9. All the guy did was rush for 700 yards. I believe it was 5 touchdowns. He threw 15 touchdowns through the air, and he finishes the QB9. The QB9. Just because he threw 15 touchdowns. That's insane. So if Anthony Richardson can come out as a rookie and throw 15 touchdowns and rush for 700 yards and 5-6 touchdowns, he's a top 10 quarterback. It's that easy. And he actually has decent weapons. Sadly, he lost Paris Campbell, but Michael Pittman Jr., he has the big tight ends. I just like that offense. I did last year, and Matt Ryan sucked. But I think Anthony Richardson, if he could just get active on the ground, he's going to be a steal as legitimately an undrafted or very late round flyer pick. Why not take the shot? Once again, if he sucks, you just drop him and you pick up Kirk Cousins off a waiver wire or Geno Smith or whoever. You just find someone else to replace him in 2 weeks into the season. It's that easy. All right, and those are my late round QB targets that I'm looking at this year for fantasy football. If you liked the video, leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel for more content. It's late July, so content's gonna be flying in from all directions. So if you're trying to get ready for your draft, stick around. We'll dominate drafts and we'll knock it out of the park. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.